you could all appreciate. I thought what I might do before I jump in is we'll do just a quick little novelty warm-up. You're welcome across this session to use the Q&A function. You can ask questions. We'll keep an eye on that. So during the session, use the Q&A to let us know that you're there and that you're alive. But to begin with, we're going to have a little warm-up activity so we can make sure that you can use that Q&A function. And as you can tell from my accent, I'm not from here. Hence, the warm-up is going to be connected to that. Let me know if you can see that on the screen. You can see on the scale of Australia. If somebody could give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Thank you, Antonio. Good. Tough audience today. On the scale of Australian animals, how are you feeling today? You get a chance to pop that in the Q&A box, number between 1 and 9. While you're thinking about that, also have a look to the right of the screen for some information about AI for community and technical colleges that will come in handy shortly. In case you don't know those animals, koala, possum, not like your hideous looking possums in America, but cute possums. Echidna, monotreme, lays eggs. We've got the Tasmanian devil. It's the only carnivorous Australian animal, apart from the dingo. The fierce magpie, the threatener of small children riding push bikes. We have the sulphur-crested cockatoo, number 6. The charming looking quokka. Don't be fooled though, when they're threatened, they will throw their babies at a predator and run away. I think there's something useful in there for everybody, don't you? Obviously, number 8, the great red kangaroo. And number 9, it's a sugar glider. So by now you should have had a chance to pop that into the box. I'll put a link over on the right-hand side of the screen, the short address for AI for community colleges. And I'll talk about that briefly before we jump into the proper introductions. Microsoft's
Mark,
AI, oh, sorry.
Mark, I've got to tell you that no one is a 6.
No one is a 6. Okay, that's
everyone is something other than a 6.
Right, I'd be worried if there are 7, those who want to throw their children at predators. We don't have a wombat up there, but yesterday was International Wombat Day, and it's famous because 2 things. One is its poo is in a cube shape, and the reason its poo is cube shaped is their buttocks are particularly armored. So when they're threatened, they will dive headfirst in their burrow, leaving their buttocks exposed, but they're kind of armored. So no predator can get through. They've literally have got buns of steel. Bet you weren't expecting that today. So the AI for Community Technical Colleges program was announced a few weeks ago by Microsoft. There's a link on the page. It's a partnership with NAAIC and the American Association of Community Colleges. Aims to promote enhanced AI literacy, strategic AI implementation, and also workforce development. And it does that through 2 ways. One is faculty training and instructor training. There's boot camps. They make that sound enticing. Boot camps, webinars, and workshops. And then on the industry-aligned AI curriculum, there's ready-to-use, teach content, ready to take and go. There's Microsoft coursework, industry accredited. There's also virtual labs, so you can spin up virtual labs and engage in real-world problem solving across a number of industries. All of that is free, and that's all available right now. So we'll make sure you get the link to that, but this is not a commercial break. So I'll just change my screens around a little bit and we'll move into the main flow. Delighted to be here moderating. Mark Sparvel from Microsoft Education. I'm here because of technical and vocational education. It's what guided me back into an education path and fundamentally changed the trajectory of my career, giving me a bizarre and diverse range of skills and helping me to realize that I could learn and engage at any point in my life. So super fan, and thanks to AACC for the invitation to be here today. And also warm thanks to Patty and Antonio for joining us here. This webinar today is really about unlocking insights from Babson and insights from Miami-Dade College around how they got to having an AI-ready campus, what that means, and what are some of the outputs for that. So it's going to be a free-flowing conversation that picks up the pipes, the plumbing, the policy, and the practice. from the viewpoint of Antonio and Patty. To begin with, I'm going to ask both of them just to provide a brief introduction to you, loving and thoughtful audience, and give us a little bit of a sense of the perspective that they'll bring to the conversation through their particular role and interests in this topic. Patty, can we start with you?
Sure. Hello, everybody. My name is Patty Patria, and as Mark mentioned, I'm the CIO at Babson College. I've been here for about 3 years. Mark, it's a pleasure to have a conversation with you about AI again, and I always learn something new, including today, the shape of poo of animals in Australia. So that was fun. I liked it. Babson has been very heavily involved in AI for the last 2.5 years, really since things sort of kicked off in 2023, building strategies around it. And so I'm really looking forward to the various conversations we're going to have today.
Thanks, Patty. Antonio, welcome.
Thank you, Mark. So hello again for this audience. I've connected before community of practice, either through training with the community, with the National Applied AI Consortium, or in the previous community of practice talking about Microsoft Copilot. But today, I'm really representing my role at Miami-Dade College as Vice President of Innovation and Technology Partnerships, where I was tasked, innovation today is just 100% AI. And I was tasked at my institution on how can we build the whole ecosystem and environment to be able to implement AI, not only teach AI to our students, but really being able to implement AI for our own benefit, efficiency, and to support the students at the end.
Awesome. Thanks for the introduction, both of you. And what you both haven't mentioned, and just for the benefit of our audience, they're modest, these people. Beyond Babson, Patty served as co-chair for EduCause's Higher Education Information Security Committee and is an active professional in a number of organizations. And Antonio, interestingly, former Dean of School of Engineering, Technology and Design. It's an impressive credential. And you've got your Master's in Computer Network from the University of Westminster, London. You were living in London to achieve that, correct?
That's correct. And I didn't pick the accent, but it's so refreshing to listen to you today.
There we go. I didn't pick the accent either. I got it on Amazon. They had an accent pack for IT professionals, and the Australian one was cheaper than the New Zealand one. So that explains that. Thanks for those introductions. We're going to have a good conversation. I might seem glib, but one of my jobs in Microsoft is around being a chief story hunter around AI implementation, adoption. And I'm always curious about not the why, because I'm pretty sure most people are clear about why they're starting. They're aligning to their vision, their values of their organization, their institution, or indeed their entire country. But people are really interested in the how bits now and in what order, the processes. So what I'm going to do is start off with inviting both of you to talk about what does it mean. This topic is, how do you build an AI-ready campus? I don't want you to think about where you're at now, but I want you to think about where you were. The pipes, the plumbing, the policy, what were all of the bits that needed to be put in place, the strategic intent? A quick example, I was interviewing a health company yesterday, a health university in, I think it was North Carolina, and they engaged in a massive adoption of AI, which meant they'd had a massive adoption of cloud and a shift of workloads to the cloud. And my question to them was, what was your tipping point? Like, what was the tipping point that caused you to embark upon this, to get ready for this? In their case, they used the word catastrophic failure of their on-premise servers was a tipping point for them to realize vulnerabilities. But they hastened to add, this was as much about what they were running towards as what they were running away from. They were running away from risk, but they were running towards opportunity. But we all know there's a lot of pieces to the puzzle. Antonio, could you take us on a little kind of meandering journey with Miami-Dade Community College around becoming an AI-ready campus that's allowing you now to explore and innovate?
So, Mark, the first thing that comes to mind, AI-ready campus, even that concept is not a straight line or a straight answer. It's just going to continue changing. that as AI continues evolving, we have to continue evolve and get our technology ready for that. There is a difference of that same question 2 years ago when we started looking at this same question, like what it means to be an AI-ready campus, and I see that completely different today, and I'm sure it's going to be completely different 2 years from now. So, but I want to take your approach of let's go back to that beginning and that breaking point, and for me, it's a little bit different because I came from the academic side. I was a dean. I created AI programs, and then 3 years ago, we launched those programs academically for our own community here. Like we were training people in AI. We were pioneers in doing that, at least in Florida. And we were having success, and our students were learning and being ready to implement. And then we suddenly looked at ourselves, like, how come we are training our community to work in AI and we're not applying that ourselves? So that's what I'm saying, that my perspective didn't come from IT. It came more from the academic side. And in my role as VP of innovation, I was innovating on the curriculum. I was innovating on what we could teach in collaboration with companies like Microsoft. But the same company, example, Microsoft, that is a partner to help us implement better the technology on IT, but we didn't have the, let's say, the skill sets on the IT department to make that happen. And same institution that is teaching all the students how to get the skill set to apply outside. So for us that was a tipping point to we have a great program going academically. Let's now focus internally. How can we build that concept of what it means to be an AI campus and what it means to be ready to be able to adopt AI? So that I took that as my main role and focus and attention to how can we go in that direction, from understanding like what are we using today that already has AI, and from there quickly realizing that yes, you can have software, and in that point changing policy, like first of all, we're not going to invest in more software unless they bring an AI implementation. They are leveraging AI. So we as academic institutions, we use LMS, SIS, CRM, you name it, and so many things that we have to add to the pile, that if we don't consider how those softwares that we have to implement bring AI, that we're going to be at a disadvantage. And 1-2 years from now, or already we are already at a disadvantage. So and that's only at the surface. At a deeper level, is not how those softwares use AI, is how we establish the infrastructure and the whole strategy of the institution to then by ourselves be able to leverage AI and to have, in our case, our priority is the student experience. How can we bring AI to improve the student experience? So that became the mantra, the priority, and not all the processes in the college to be more efficient using AI. We are here because of our students. How can we transform their journey with AI to make it especially personalized? And that's now, like, for us to be an AI campus means that we are an AI-ready institution for the students, and that's what we are working actively now with the whole understanding of the ecosystem and where we need to go to make that happen.
Thanks for that, Antonio. That had some great points in there around building capacity, competence, confidence of the faculty. Also, I liked one of the questions I'd written down was, how do organizations with so many things maintain focus? And you've answered that by talking about this student experience piece. It sounds like the North Star that you look and check against. Would that be correct?
Yes, Mark. The student experience from all interactions that a student can have from Miami-Dade College, from the moment they register, from the moment we're recruiting them and they register, or they find us any way they could find us, to the moment that they start taking classes and the learning process, the retention, how we keep them and we keep them happy, how we help them pass their courses, and how we guide them through the right coursework they have to take towards their own benefit, not our benefit, but what they really want to accomplish with their education. And then from there, how can we help them get out with a meaningful job? So
I love that.
That's the whole pathway that we are really bringing AI in a meaningful way, connecting all the systems, and then bringing now agentic solutions to be able to deliver on that goal.
And we'll come back to agentic solutions in a bit, but appreciate that additional commentary. Interesting that you're speaking from this perspective of an academic background, and now you've moved into this area, and now we've got Patty lined up here, who's a chief information officer, very much from both that technical kind of world, and you've mentioned infrastructure, a critical component, and one that when people talk about AI adoption, you can't seemingly have that conversation unless you've had lots of conversations about infrastructure, security, data estate management, all sorts of things. So, Patty, how about you take us on a little tour of Babson College from your perspective as CIO in terms of what does it mean to be an AI-ready campus?
Sure, I'd be happy to do that. And I think at the end of the day, my goal is the same as Antonio's, right? It's the student focus, it's providing them with the tools, but the journey is very different. So for me, building an AI-ready campus is about a couple of things. One, Marcus, you just mentioned the infrastructure, and I'm going to talk about that. One is the culture of the institution. And then one is really being able to be future ready, because that's the world that we live in. From an infrastructure perspective, I got to Babson in the summer of 2022, and we lived, it wasn't quite as disastrous of the story you mentioned, but I was in a partly Google world for documents, a partly Microsoft world for mail, and a partly on-prem world. And it was just too cumbersome to support. So we actually had decided very quickly after my getting here, we were going to consolidate into one world from an infrastructure. And that world was obviously Microsoft, which is hard for institutions. When you live in multiple worlds, it's a big change management issue, but bringing all your infrastructure in one place streamlines things and then gives you the platform you need to expand. So actually by, I think, July of 2023, we had just gone live with moving everything for faculty, staff, and students who are on these distributed worlds into Microsoft for Mail, OneDrive, and SharePoint. All of our data was in the cloud and ready. And then I think in August, we started to leverage Copilot with our Microsoft subscription, which could then tie into those things. And it made me look like a genius because we just migrated everything into one place that Copilot could access. And Copilot was part of our license for all of our faculty, staff, and soon later students. And it gave us a tool set that allowed our community to be really on the forefront of AI. I will also add, from a culture perspective, it's really important to communicate, and it's also important to experiment, especially with AI. It's important to fail quickly. So you have to build that into the process along with all the infrastructure and security and all the other good things you need to do. And lastly, it's also really important to make sure that you have the right skills in your organization to leverage AI and to train your faculty, staff, and students on the value. And if you can do that, then you can really take off in building your AI-ready campus.
Great. Love that. Thank you. And you touched on a couple of things. I think the change management, I know that's a part of your, a strong part of your professional background. I just wonder, as you think about the root cause of success at Babson, you could just explain a little bit about that change management, because you talked about moving from sort of almost like whether it was multi-cloud, but certainly multi-iOS kind of environment to a unified environment. People will have invested a lot of time and energy into what they'd already built in terms of whether they're instructors with courseware or whether it's the administrative area in terms of processes. How did you navigate all of those pieces?
Yeah, so there was a tremendous amount of change management in that. And I think the most important thing is explaining the why. When you explain to people why you're doing this, we could provide better service, one platform where all of our faculty, staff, and students could collaborate, because students were in the Google world. In fact, staff were partially in the Microsoft world. It was very difficult to collaborate. There's always cost ramifications, right? It was a cost savings to consolidate in one area. And the other thing, there was much better security in the world. So when we explained the why to people, and we did a lot of communication and outreach about the why, they understood it, even though if they weren't really happy with it. If somebody had been a Google user for 10 years, they're like, well, I don't want to change. When we explained the why to them, that was really helpful in the process.
Okay. What about you, Antonio? At Miami-Dade Community Colleges, when you sort of kicked off, the shift of the journey that you're on, did you establish a super internal team with multi-stakeholders? Did you identify change champions? How did you go about getting the momentum moving?
So great question, because that's exactly what happened. Definitely coming down from the president of the institution, we created an AI task force, and not a task force for publicity purposes. Like, yes, we have a task force like everyone else. It's just internal. No one knew who was a member of the task force, and not to make it secret. It's just to be able to work and operate, not for the publicity of what we were doing, but really to make it work. So from, of course, the CIO of the institution to the head of IR and data analysis to the head of finance, the head of online education, we have most of the data probably than any other unit. Really combining everyone with a key role from a data perspective and management of that data. So with that task force, we established the foundation, we established the direction, and from there we started implementation. And what the first implementation, and thinking on change management, the first implementation was Microsoft Copilot. Like, we are already a Microsoft shop, it's just implementing Copilot. And the previous community of practice was just a topic about Copilot, so I don't want to expand too much about it. It's just the idea of you can invest in a tool and you can invest in AI. But the fact that you're investing on AI doesn't mean that people will use AI properly. So that's the vision and strategy communication and the showcasing and the example and the training and the preparation that needs to come, that this is not a problem of budget, that you pay for something and then suddenly everything is going to happen on AI. It comes from this group of individuals having a strategy, having a vision, having direction, and priorities coming all the way from the president, communication coming down, and then boom, there you go. When you implement, you see the traction, you see the engagement and implementation, to the point that we have been doing Copilot for almost 2 years now, and the engagement is always above 90%. I did some screen sharing last time, and I saw like people were able to see like 90% engagement. You don't force people to use Copilot. They are using it naturally because you created an environment that they feel comfortable and they can implement it with their solutions. But of course, that comes also when you mention security and policy. You cannot implement Copilot if you don't have control over your data, and then you don't have the right secure mechanisms. And that's something that Microsoft really helped us accomplish, and the privacy, the sharing elements that people didn't pay attention before now became relevant and important. So we have done a lot of training, communication, and change management in that period. And this is just one example, but it replicates easily into multiple of the other examples on other tools that leverage AI, and how we make sure that our team gets it. Like, why are we doing this and why they're part of the solution.
Mhm. Thanks for that, Patty. I'd like you to sort of see whether you could, I know that Antonio was sort of following up from your commentary, and I'd like to give you a chance to sort of pick up some pieces, because certainly Antonio mentioned that, the importance for all staff to develop their data literacy,
Yep.
also their awareness around privacy. We know that hackers aren't hacking in, hackers are logging in. And we know that as we move to a sort of an agentic AI powered world, vulnerabilities increase as well. So I'd love you to pick up that little theme around how you're approaching it at Babson, moving in a safe, secure, but without that hindering innovation.
Sure. So actually, I'm going to start with the training and then I'll move to the security, because I agree with Antonio. The training is so critical. We actually, I think it was around July of 2024, when still, many schools were on the fence with AI. We had been experimenting already with our faculty for a good 6+ months. And we had developed this all in sort of strategy. And we started with training with our president and president's council. And we did a hands-on training session, AI with laptops, in a room with them for 3 hours, and actually had them do the experiential learning hands-on, getting them to enter in prompts into Copilot in just the browser, and then Word, and then Excel, to try different things. And it was amazing to see the light bulb turn on in that room full of executives who had no idea what AI was or the impact, and how it could drastically change what they did in their organizations. And then that morphed into training for all of our staff, and specialized training sessions for our faculty. So with Antonio, I can't, talk about how important that training is to do. Relative to the security aspect, that is equally important. Again, probably 6 months in after Gen AI started to pop up, we could see right away from a risk perspective, if people weren't using AI properly, you could lose a lot of your proprietary information. So we developed policies first around Gen AI and explained to, again, communicated with our community, use only our closed systems, which is Copilot for sensitive data. If you, from an academic perspective, want to use open systems that are free with your coursework or non-sensitive data, that's fine. But it's really critically important. And then as AI started to evolve and develop, and we would see things on our network that were not secure, for example, we could see DeepSeek, right? And we didn't want our faculty or our staff to put things in DeepSeek and have our IP in China, right? So we quickly learned to pivot fast with the Microsoft security tool sets we had to block certain AI tools that we found risky, like DeepSeek. And then we started to block, and we only did it for staff. We didn't do it for faculty and students because we wanted to continue experimentation. We blocked things like Firefly's AI because that was starting to attend meetings and take notes and send them to people who shouldn't see very highly sensitive notes from meetings. And so it's really critical that you have policy, you educate, but that you have the tools in place to block when there is risk.
I love that example where the whisper there of the benefits of automation of certain workflows. I was talking to Coquitlam schools, and one of their challenges was that sometimes from good intentions, people create vulnerabilities.
Right.
Their example was 2 teachers want to collaborate on some report notes for student reports, and to make it fast and easy, they pop it in their personal, or go to pop it in their personal OneDrive to make collaboration easy. What happens now is it gets blocked because they've built an agent which is trained on their protocols, because they can't monitor 5,000 attempts to save incorrectly a day, but an agent can. It blocks it. It lets the person know why it's blocked it. So it's actively prevented them from saving it in a non-secure environment. And then it's flagged an alert so that eventually somebody can see, well, obviously we need to train a little bit more around this area of understanding, how we manage and tag files to ensure that we don't increase vulnerabilities. Good intentions can sometimes have unexpected results, but the tension is always around not stifling innovation. Antonio, give us a little bit of a sense of Miami-Dade Community College and your your risk management approaches, or your risk appetite for innovation. How do you straddle those two?
I like more the risk appetite for innovation, let everyone be able to innovate in on a certain environment where they can innovate. So that's really where it's a great transition with Copilot as an example. When Copilot Studio was available to everyone, we let people innovate and we let people get it and use it. Not restriction from what can you build with it. And actually, we had amazing examples of projects built by faculty on how they were building their own assistants, to the point that we created a case study with Microsoft about this faculty from data analytics that created the first agent just as a teaching assistant, and his retention and not only participation on the class, but retention and grades improved semester over semester just by having that teaching assistant, that we quickly scaled that agent with other classes, and we train other faculty on how you can implement this with your own class. So basically, we didn't want to be so restrictive. There is, of course, FERPA, and there is data that you cannot share, but we're more afraid of faculty trying to innovate, as Patty mentioned, outside of the boundaries, using a free version online, and you're just sharing everything from the institution. We prefer that they do innovate, but within the tools and resources that we created for them. And that's when, again, agents were starting, and that's what I mentioned at the beginning, that the AI ready is gonna always continue changing. We were not ready for agents the same way that no one was ready for agents, because it was something new, but we were allowing our faculty and staff to innovate with it, and some were more proactive than others. But really, like, what we were missing at that point is direction. So that's where we picked it up. We know what works. Now let's put it into, let's have a strategy and prioritization into where do we want to invest in terms of agents. First of all, is I talk about the multiple softwares that we have at the institution, but if you have softwares that don't talk to each other, you just have bubbles of information that are not useful enough for AI to do a good job, not only understanding the data, but reacting to that data, and with an agent, bringing solutions when you understand the patterns on that data. So that's quickly the transition that we had for not just like how do you condense data together. Now we're thinking on how we make it work in a way that is not just to have the data, is to have agents on top of that data. Now we are prioritizing what are the agentic space and what are the solutions that we want on the agent. It's not just what a faculty wants to do for innovation purposes. This is the direction that we're following as an institution, and this is where we're investing to make sure that we have a meaningful experience for the student, going back to the student. It doesn't depend on one faculty that was an innovator. Now it's the whole institution creating a solution that every student can leverage, no matter which faculty is teaching your class. And that's the direction that we're following now. So that's why I like that risk appetite. I see on the chat that someone is loving that term. So there you go, Mark.
It's a pleasure. It's Mark from marketing. There you go. Has to be a soundbite. I want to pick this up, and we're going to have like a little cognitive pause just for a moment, which is important in any conversation. Music without spaces is just noise, and learning without spaces is just noise. So here's a little space for both our audience to do a quick reflect, and certainly pop some comments in the Q&A. Let us know how things are going, questions that you've got. I'm going to ask both Patty and Antonio an AI use case question, a personal one. So how have you used it in your personal life recently? And it doesn't have to be a Microsoft product. We get where everybody has choices. And also a work one that you yourself have used. And I'll give you a moment to think about it, because no one likes a little bit of too much pressure at once. My work one is I created my own agent, which I'd never done, after getting inspired last week, sitting next to somebody in a real world conference. And I trained it on, it's an agent that writes education stories, IT stories. And I trained it on our messaging positioning framework, our value proposition. I trained it on our customer stories. I trained it on our legal guidelines, our brand copybook, how Microsoft speaks, on existing customer stories. And then I directed it to some customer stories that I've sketched out only loosely, and said, here's all the information. Here's all the data we've got about them. Tell me a story that's compelling. And I sat there and watched it write this story, and it blew my mind. It was such a good first draft. And I thought, that's really going to help me as I go to interview this education system, because I've got some potential stories lined up and angles in my mind. It just really helped me. And on a personal level, I needed to create a picture of a wombat celebrating for International Wombat yesterday. And I did use Copilot to create a wombat cheering at a burrow with cubic droppings on the ground that made it look like it was a bit Minecraft parody. But they're my two uses. What about you, Patty? Something personal, something professional?
Sure. So personal, I probably use AI every day to help me from like fact checking news or finding a recipe. But I think my most innovative was like, you planned a whole vacation for me this summer. I said, I want to do these 3 things within this mile radius. Give me the places that do this. And it gave me 2 or 3 excellent choices and helped me plan my vacation this summer. So that's personally. Professionally, I probably spend 50% of my week these days on different AI projects. But from a personal perspective too, like you, Mark, I was working on a presentation like on the weekend for the president, and I needed some very specific images. So I went into Copilot and ChatGPT, and I asked them both to create images for me of different types of bots, and they both did a really great job. And normally that's something you'd have to go to marketing for, a designer for. And I just plopped those images into the PowerPoint, sent it to the president, all was good in a matter of like 10 minutes. So that was really, really helpful. And I've tried to create an agent that is an assistant on my calendar and helping me address, I'm always overbooked with multiple meetings and coming up with that, but I haven't got it working yet. So eventually I will get it working.
I love that idea. I'll be lined up to borrow the code from that one. Could help me out big time, especially if it's able to bend time and space. Then yeah. Everything's possible. Antonio, personal and professional.
So yeah, for me, it mixes from personal to professional. Like I have Copilot in my hand for everything that I have to do professionally, definitely with Outlook on my emails. Like I come from Cuba, my first language is Spanish, so it's still like Copilot is a life changer. Like I don't spend 30 minutes anymore writing an email. I can do it in 3 like everyone else, just because Copilot can help me. But all the way from my headshot, like I had to update my headshot. Like, no, I'm gonna use an existing headshot. I'm just gonna use AI to improve it. So it's all part of the day to day, like that, no question about it. But I have a recent story that I really enjoyed myself. I was so proud of myself. I'm collaborating with Microsoft on this community of practice, bringing a lot of training for community colleges through the National Applied AI Consortium. And the demand has been impressive. Thousands of people, faculty, staff, they're all coming. So Greg, that I know is on the call, leading the vision from the Microsoft side, we're always bringing like, how can we do more training? How can we bring more solutions? And then we create more training, we add it to the website, and Greg said, yeah, but we need, can you create, can they just register right there? And I said, oh, I have to contact the webmaster. You know what? I'm gonna do it myself. I just went HTML, hey, Copilot, I need to create this instance for people to register right there. It's like, yeah, here it is. Oh, I need it on this color. Boom. So I was so proud to tell Greg and the team, hey guys, I got it. I did my first HTML program ever. I was cheating. I didn't do it myself, but there you go. I did it with Copilot on HTML. And so I was so proud of myself, and probably Greg didn't appreciate that as much as I did on, programming. But the result was there, and I know they did. And at the end, is serving this community that is joining this call today, is to be able to access more training. And sometimes you have that situation that you can use AI to help you do things faster and better.
Let's wallow in that final comment. I'm going to pull a thread through. I've been interviewing a number of academics and thought leaders for my podcast, Super Speaks, which listens to researchers, academic thought leaders, provocateurs in education around, what is happening in this AI-fueled landscape. One of the hot topics at the moment seems to be around the very risk of cognitive outsourcing. I mean, you talked about, Antonio, cheating, but really you were just outsourcing, some work to drive efficiencies. And we see lots of valuable use in outsourcing some functions to AI. But there's a large number of people who are particularly concerned with our learners, so sitting in our community colleges, where the very shortcut might deny them the essence of learning itself, the productive struggle that learning is a part of. I say to people that learning isn't Demi Moore shaping clay on a pottery wheel, all gentle and smooth. Learning is sometimes being hammered a sword on a forge. It's unpleasant and difficult, but that's what's firing up the synapses in the brain. So Patty, let's start with you. I'm just interested at Babson. There's this whole topic around metacognition, thinking about thinking, the value of the productive struggle, when, where, and why to use AI. How are you approaching that with your students?
So I think when faculty incorporate AI the right way into courses, students have learning, and maybe the learning is even better. And I'll give a couple of examples. So we have one faculty member, Professor Nana Hashmi, who's fabulous, who teaches grad students on how to code. And these are business students, so they don't have a lot of experience, but they're still learning how to code. And she's leveraging AI prompt data from quizzes and tests to see the questions they're asking to improve their capabilities. And she can actually see the metacognition and learning improving because she's showed them, here's how you can leverage the tool to make your job better. The other thing we're in the process of building is an AI entrepreneurship console, because we're an entrepreneurship business school, and we want to help students with entrepreneurial ideas. But it's not just going to provide them with the information, it's going to provide them with prompting questions. In addition to what you just asked, did you think about these 3 things, right? And so if you incorporate it the right ways, we think it can help with the cognition.
That's a great example. In fact, the person I interviewed, the latest podcast, Vanessa Peters-Hinton from Digital Promise, talked specifically about the valuable potential of AI tools in allowing for greater reflection of individuals, using it as a tool to help reflect back. And she had a quick example. I pushed her for one, which was using AI to listen specifically for an instructor's use of wait time and provide feedback on that. Another example was they trained it on a whole range of different questioning types, from open, closed, to circular, to Socratic, and asked it to listen, not to judge the teacher, but for the teacher to get feedback themselves in the course of a busy day. Am I asking a range of question types, or am I just simply asking for fact checking and knowledge recall? Or am I inviting inference and further hypothesis generation? Or am I inviting people to build on the responses of others? So you raised some really good points. Antonio, curious about the experience there at Miami-Dade Community College around conversations of when, how students should be leveraging AI, risks of cognitive outsourcing and the such.
So there is a lot of conversation. It's not new. I mean, new from now, and not even when ChatGPT happened. We were having that conversation 5 years ago already. We were already exposing faculty to AI. We were having the conversation around AI, the training, the workshop, the being open to AI with faculty. And then ChatGPT happened as that, moment in time that everything changes in the hands of everyone, and a lot of institutions banning AI. And for us was the opposite. No, we're not going to ban the Britannica Encyclopedia the same way we're not banning now ChatGPT. So we are allowing the students to use it, but we were having meaningful conversations early on, and now more than ever, this is time to change education. It's not about the student cheating by using AI. It's like we're asking the wrong assessment. The assessment that was working for the last 20 years, that you were teaching the class the same way with the same homework or the same assessment or the final test, well, you have to change it. As an educator, it's your duty to rethink with the tool that a student has today, which is AI. It's not about, oh, you cannot use AI. No, you have to leverage AI. And it's not that a cheating element of using AI is you have to change the assessment. You have to change the way that we're allowing our students to be the humans that can control AI tomorrow when they graduate from our programs. What is the point of having a student restricted from using AI to then get to the workforce and then not being able to get a job because they were restricted so much on AI that they don't know how to implement AI properly? It's the opposite. Our role in academia is to help the student be ready for the tools that they need to use when they graduate. But that means like, okay, but they're going to be cheating all the time. No, it's because they're cheating based on the conditions that we have been teaching and educating for the last century. We just this is the time for education to evolve. And I'm not talking only about Miami-Dade College or community colleges or even higher education. I'm talking about education at large. And what needs to come up is not just the way for them to teach, it's the way for them to communicate, the way for them to express their ideas, to validate each other, to argue, to engage as a team and have a meaningful conversation for a productive solution. If you have your assessment is to write an essay about something, of course they're going to use AI. You're only evaluating AI when you evaluate, and then you have this algorithm to check if they use AI. Of course, it's going to be positive, and yes, you should be asking them to use AI. What you change is the homework or the assessment to say, present the essay, not to me, to the rest of the students, and then I want to see the counter argument. Talking in personal interaction, that critical thinking is the one that we are bringing now through education, and that's what is going to make the students succeed, not the fact that they use AI or not.
Love that. Made some really good points there. Thank you. And when we ask students to justify, to defend, to describe, to explain, to compare, to draw a parallel, to draw upon a personal experience and make a connection point, that's when the students are engaged in deep reflective language. And I love that you mentioned conversation. I'll often call if I'm delivering a keynote, rather than the age of AI, I call it the age of conversation. Because what's changed is fundamentally our relationship with technology. We're no longer creating, saving, storing, sharing. We're dialoguing with data. We're having conversations with our Excel spreadsheets. We're having conversations with our agents. And that's a nice thing. It's a very human thing to have a conversation. Patty, let's just go one little click back. We're obviously wallowing a little bit away from the technical infrastructure and readiness. That's fine. The ethical and responsible use is really kind of what we're talking about here. And I'm curious that it sounds like students need to both learn about AI and AI systems, and also how to use them, about and how to use them. So just curious, the whole ethical, responsible use without over-indexing on, plagiarism as a kind of a red herring that seems to, but that broader ethical, responsible use, how are you guys thinking and navigating that?
Sure. So I think ethical privacy and safeguards, they're all critical. Because there's no guidelines or regulations in the US, we actually follow the EU AI Act, right? And we only try to engage in AI that falls under certain types of risk parameters. We also educate both our employees and our students on the security around AI, explaining the difference, as I mentioned before, between open and closed systems and the risks with that. As we get into more building, we educate people around bias and hallucinations and the importance of testing, and the importance of having a human in the loop to review the results, right? You want to make sure the results are accurate. You want to make sure they're not biased. We also, I think, which is super helpful, we have an AI governance committee that is comprised of 5 or so faculty members, staff members, administrators. They're the most forward-thinking AI people on campus. And we use this group to talk about responsibility. And in fact, I mentioned when we decided to block DeepSeek and Fireflies, we had the conversation with this AI governance committee and said, okay, we understand risk here. We understand the problems. Let's block it on the staff side, but leave it open on the faculty and student side so that they can experiment in the class understanding the risks. So those are sort of all the ways that we manage that area.
Love that. Thank you. I'm just conscious of the time, friends. We're going to jump to Katie, who's going to source some incredibly perplexing questions from the crowd, and then we'll see how we go between us in responding to those. Katie, over to you.
Thanks, Mark. The first question I'm going to draw from the Q&A, I'm going to actually take moderator's privilege and ask it two ways. Letitia Wilson is asking, how do we make sure that practitioners are not overwhelmed with technology for student success? I see dozens of emails a day coming in with AI tools, AI training. I'm being inundated with options. So what are some good ways to navigate and evaluate what's out there? And then also in terms of giving faculty tools for student success, like how are you doing that on your campuses? And I'll let Antonio and Patty both weigh in.
On my side, I totally empathize with Letitia. Is that, like, we have, and I was referring to this before, the SIS system, we use one in particular, then we use another one for, let's say, advisement. And then we use another one for the LMS for teaching. And then you have people with access to one software, and then you implement a new CRM, and then people have to go through 4 different softwares just to find student information. And then it's overwhelming when you have all this information, or even worse, sometimes you only have access to one of them, so you cannot help the student if you don't see everything else about that student. And that's exactly what we're solving. It's not about bringing more tools where people feel more overwhelmed. What we want to do with AI is to unify all that information, that then you're going to have a new seamless integration that you don't know which tool. You can go deeper to find out the tool, but you only have one single place where you can see everything and interact with that single place and apply AI on top of it. So that's the future that we see where technology is going to go. Is just whatever software you use, whatever software you have to use, you can plug into a bigger spectrum that comes with an, let's say, agentic space where your agents get implemented and they can touch into different aspects of the student journey, because it's what we're referring here, but it could be on any other process. And then you can bring solutions that, despite of which software you're using, you can have agents solving that exact question of being overwhelmed with so many different tools and softwares.
And so I'll jump in from a faculty perspective in trying to not overwhelm them with all the AI. What we actually do is we have a group of faculty that train our other faculty on AI tools. We had 2 or 3 sessions last year, and we're having some more this year, but they'll pick some of the most standard stuff and they'll say, start with this. And of course, we always start with Copilot because we have a site license for that in Copilot Studio. But if you want to try vibe coding with, Replit or Lovable or things like that, they'll show them 2 or 3 things just to try to get the ideas out and not overwhelm them. Relative to student success support, as Antonia mentioned, like we've got a CRM system, there's a lot to it. We have Copilot for our employees where that can help them in overall productivity, but we also have an intake queue of AI projects, and we let people suggest things they'd like to do with AI, and we try to staff it with students to build the AI stuff. And so like we would prioritize that and try to build something for that area if they needed it maybe over other areas.
Oh, I love to hear about students getting that opportunity. Antonia, you touched on this a little bit when you were talking about being having English as your second language and utilizing AI in that way. What are some of the tools that you're seeing out there for access and ensuring that students with disabilities or students with learning differences, et cetera, are incorporated and can realize the promise of technology like this?
So it definitely is the bigger answer is awareness. Like, I'm thinking on my role, Patty's role is just thinking on the final user, just to be aware of, to be inclusive on solutions that everyone can use and not just a few or majority, but not everyone. So definitely, depending on the disability, there are different solutions that can help specific disabilities, but overall bringing solutions that, AI is evolving, of course, quickly enough to make sure that we are inclusive and not exclusive. And that's something that just always to be aware of that. So I'm glad that the question came because it's something that we have to keep top of mind as we implement solutions in AI.
And I'll add for disability services.
Sorry, you go, Patty.
Yeah, for disability services, we actually have started using supported AI note-taking tools for students who have accommodations for note-taking instead of having a person doing the note-taking like we did 2 or 3 years ago. And so there are now tools designed in that area to actually support the students better. We approve them and support them.
Love that. My comment was going to be, I think what we're seeing, I've been in, like you guys, I've been in education a long time, 3 decades plus. And in the past, technology was seen to cater for a disability. What I see the big shift with AI is it unlocks the ability. It unlocks the ability each and every person has to imagine, to create, to communicate, contribute, collaborate. In the past, it was, how do we cater for a disability or a difference? The shift for me, and the exciting shift, is how do we use these tools to unlock everyone's inherent ability to do more, be more, and expect more? And that's where it's exciting. Katie, I'm conscious of the time, but do you have one more question? I just want to give a quick shout out. Letitia, you made a great comment before about using AI in the chat to soften hard conversations that maybe you were having with people. And I thought that was a great use case. Katie?
Yeah, I mean, I think the last question that came in was asking for ways you think that colleges could collaborate. How could they be working together? And that leads really well into, Antonio, if you want to talk a little bit more about the consortium, and there's a link that Greg just put into the Q&A at the bottom to get to those training opportunities again. So Antonio, you want to talk a little bit about the consortium and collaboration opportunity?
Yeah, definitely, because that's the reason why we created this consortium. Is we know that community colleges are not the top of mind when there is funding coming down from federal government or state or even local funding. Like we need to help each other. Public institutions, we need to come together to help each other, and that's what we have. That's the reason why we created the National Applied AI Consortium, to help community colleges implement AI more from an academic perspective, but definitely is also a space where we can have these type of conversations and resources about what works, what doesn't work. Like from an IT perspective, from an implementation perspective, from solutions, particular solutions, case studies. So definitely the collaboration is top of mind. Everything is free on the consortium. The training, Greg was just adding on the chat, like the training is available. It's there for everyone for free. Microsoft is sponsoring this training about generative AI and Microsoft Copilot for free. And based on demand, we just open a lot of new sessions. So open for faculty and administrators all over to really get the training skills, abilities, all for free through the consortium.
Thanks for that. And Katie, I'm just conscious of the time, so shall I just move into a wrap?
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
Okay, then I'll cast it back to you if there's any final notes. So I've made some points here. In fact, AI has been note-taking for me, but I'll paraphrase that. It seems that in conclusion, building AI campuses requires a balanced approach that balances both innovation against ethical practice, that fosters community both within and without the institution. What I'd like to do is to thank deeply both Patty and Antonio for their contributions. This was a great conversation, very organic, very practical. You come from a place of great credibility and authority. In education across the globe where I work, our challenges are shared challenges. And the good thing about it is that our solutions are shared solutions also. It's why projects or activities like the consortium matters, to bring together the collective wisdom of the masses. So Patty, again, thank you. Always a pleasure.
You're welcome. Great. It was always a pleasure working with you as well.
And Antonio, thank you so much for your great insights.
Thank you, Mark.
And to our audience, before I cast back to Katie, thank you for your active participation and enduring my Australian humour and jokes in the course of this webinar. Hopefully there's something practical, something pragmatic, and something inspiring has come out of this for you. Back to you, Katie.
Thanks so much, everybody. We will see you again next time.
Bye.
Okay.